They thought he was just another poor black farmer, struggling alone in the backwoods of Alabama, tilling soil that had been in his family for generations. They mocked his silence. They despised his resilience, and they believed they could run him off his own land just like they had done to others before. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have imagined, was that the man they tried to break had once worn a different uniform, had once fought battles in shadows across oceans, had once been trained in the world's most elite brotherhood of warriors, the Navy SEALs. And when the harassment began, when the cruel games escalated, when the so-called good old boys crossed the line, Marcus Carter was ready in ways they could never comprehend. This is not just a story about a farm. This is a story about survival, about a quiet warrior pushed too far, and about a storm that would soon engulf an entire town. The camera would fade in on long rows of corn swaying in the wind, the soil dark and rich, but the house in the distance showing scars of time. Marcus Carter's farm wasn't just land. It was legacy. His grandfather had bought it after coming home from World War II, saving every dime from working 3 jobs to carve out those 50 acres. His father had nearly lost it in the economic collapse of the 1980s, but somehow managed to hold on. Now Marcus, a man in his early 40s with shoulders like carved granite and eyes that rarely betrayed emotion, was the caretaker. To the casual onlooker, he was just another farmer, waking before dawn, working till sundown. But in town, whispers followed him. That's Carter, the quiet one. Don't mess with him. Something about his past. Yet the bullies didn't care about whispers. It began small, almost childish. Broken fence posts, empty beer bottles scattered across his field, tire tracks through his soybean rows, as if someone had deliberately joy-ridden through his crops. Marcus said nothing. He simply rebuilt the fence, cleared the bottles, replanted. His silence was mistaken for weakness. One night, as he returned from delivering produce to farmer's market, he found graffiti spray painted across his barn. "This land ain't yours." The words dripped in red like blood. Still, Marcus stayed quiet. His neighbors, mostly white farmers, looked the other way, pretending not to notice. But one older man, Mr. Reynolds, whispered to him in the general store, "They want you gone, son. They think this land should have never been yours in the first place." Marcus only nodded, but in his mind, old instincts stirred. Instincts he thought he had buried years ago. The group finally showed their faces. For men, all in their 30s, all sons of powerful landowners in the county. They came rumbling up the dirt road one afternoon in lifted trucks, Confederate flags whipping behind them. The leader, Travis Hensley, leaned out with a sneer. "Hey boy, looks like your corn's doing good this year. Shame if something happened to it." Marcus stood at the edge of his field, wiping sweat from his brow. He didn't answer. He just stared at them, silent, unblinking. Another man chuckled. "What's the matter? Cack out your tongue. Thought you people loved to run your mouths." The others laughed, but Marcus didn't laugh, didn't blink, didn't move. That silence unsettled them more than any curse word could. Finally, Travis spat on the ground. "We'll be back. Don't get too comfortable. Carter, this land don't belong to you." The trucks roared off, leaving dust clouds in their wake. Marcus exhaled slowly. His hand tightened on the shovel handle. He remembered the old SEAL saying, "The more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle." They wanted a battle. They didn't know they had already lost. That night, Marcus checked the perimeter, but what he found didn't add up. Tracks around his barn that weren't from trucks, but boots, military-style boots. The fence wires had been cut with precision, not random vandalism. And strangest of all, his water pump had been tampered with in a way that suggested knowledge of mechanics, not drunken recklessness. This wasn't just bullying anymore. Someone in that group, or maybe someone behind them, was planning strategically. They weren't just trying to scare him. They were testing him, probing for weakness. Marcus's instincts screamed at him. This wasn't normal rural intimidation. This was calculated. And if they wanted to test, they were about to find out how dangerous the man they underestimated really was. The next time they came, Marcus was ready. It was late evening, moonlight draping silver across the fields. The trucks rolled in, headlights off, men laughing as they crept toward his barn with gasoline cans. They didn't know Marcus had been shadowing them from the tree lean. Face streaked in dark mud, moving silently the way he had once done overseas in villages where silence meant survival. As Travis struck a match, a voice cut through the night, calm, steady, unyielding. "Put it down." The men froze. Marcus stepped into the open, his shotgun slung across his chest, not aimed, but carried with quiet authority. I said, "Put it down." The way he spoke wasn't how a farmer talked. It was the tone of a commander giving an order, the kind of voice that triggered something primal, the instinct to obey. One man stammered, We were just... Leave the can. Get in your trucks. Don't come back." For a moment, no one moved. Then, slowly they obeyed, dropping the can, retreating, muttering under their breath. But as they drove off, Travis yelled through his window, "This ain't over, Carter. You don't scare us." Marcus stood there, silent, watching the taillights vanish. Inside, though, he knew something was off. They had retreated too easily, almost like they wanted him to think he'd won this round. And that made the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The very next morning, the sheriff came to his property. Sheriff Daniels, a man with tired eyes and a reputation for looking the other way. "Morning, Marcus," he drawled. "Got some complaints about you brandishing a weapon at some boys last night. You want to tell me what that's about?" Marcus narrowed his eyes. "They tried to burn my barn down." The sheriff scratched his chin. "That's so? Funny, 'cause they said you threatened them unprovoked. Said you've been acting real hostile lately." Marcus's jaw tightened. He realized in that moment the game had just shifted. The bullies weren't acting alone. They had protection. The sheriff leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Word of advice, Marcus. Folks round here don't like trouble. You keep pushing, might find yourself on the wrong side of the law." Marcus stared at him, didn't flinch, didn't blink, but inside, the realization hit hard. This wasn't just about 4 bullies. This was about the entire system stacked against him. A system that wanted his land. A system that didn't care if they had to bury him to get it. That night, as Marcus walked his fields under a cold moon, he heard something in the distance. A faint hum. Not trucks this time. Not boots. Something different. He squinted into the darkness, and then he saw it. A drone, hovering low, camera pointed straight at his farmhouse. Marcus froze. This was no prank. This was surveillance. Someone far more powerful than a few drunk rednecks wanted his land. And Marcus Carter, the man they thought was just a farmer, was about to show them what a former SEAL could do when war was brought to his doorstep. He thought it was just harassment. He thought it was just racist bullies trying to scare him off. But when Marcus Carter looked up at the night sky and saw that drone hovering over his farm, he knew this was something far bigger. Because small-town thugs don't fly military-grade drones. And they don't watch farmers through thermal cameras. Something darker was at play. Something that reached beyond his neighbors, beyond county politics. And Marcus Carter, the quiet man with a past no one truly understood, was about to find out just how deep this went. Marcus crouched low in the tall grass, his eyes locked on the faint red light blinking against the night sky. His pulse slowed, his breathing controlled. Old training kicked in. He studied its movements. Not a hobby drone. Too steady. Too quiet. This was surveillance grade. And that meant someone with serious money or serious connections was watching. He waited until it drifted east, then vanished into the tree line. By the time he slipped back into his farmhouse, he had already made up his mind. This wasn't bullying anymore. This was war. The next morning, Marcus drove into town. Not to complain. He knew the sheriff wouldn't help, but to listen. Sure enough, whispers filled the diner. People claimed Marcus had threatened innocent boys. They said he was unstable, dangerous, maybe even violent. Sheriff Daniels sat at the counter sipping coffee, glancing Marcus's way. His smirk told Marcus everything. The sheriff wasn't just looking the other way. He was helping them spin the story. As Marcus left, the sheriff called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Careful now, Carter. Folks get nervous. Round men who don't know their place." The laughter that followed cut through the room like knives. Marcus didn't respond. But inside, a storm was brewing. Back at the farm, Marcus began to notice more strange details. His soil samples, he tested them every season, showed abnormal traces of rare minerals. Minerals that could mean the land held more value than just crops. A man in a suit, out of place in rural Alabama, had been spotted talking to Travis's father, a wealthy landowner, just days before the bullying began. And most damning, Marcus discovered faint tire tracks leading from his property straight toward the private airstrip just 10 miles away. This wasn't about racism alone. Racism was a weapon. The motive was greed. Marcus didn't have to wait long for the next strike. It was midnight when he heard engines in the distance. Not trucks this time. ATVs, fast, nimble, perfect for sneaking through fields. He killed his lights, grabbed his night vision scope, and watched in the shadows as 4 figures crept toward his barn. They weren't carrying spray paint or gasoline this time. They were carrying bolt cutters and rifles. His pulse stayed calm, his mind sharp. He could take them down. He could end this tonight. But he hesitated. Something told him these weren't just the local bullies anymore. As one man clipped the lock on the barn, Marcus made his move, not with violence, but with precision. A single sharp whistle cut through the night. His dogs, 2 massive mastiffs trained since pups, charged from the shadows. The intruders panicked, stumbling, cursing, firing warning shots into the air as the dogs herded them back toward the tree line. Marcus didn't chase, didn't fire a single shot. He simply watched them retreat, then melted back into the darkness. He had what he needed, confirmation. They were armed, they were trained, and someone was bankrolling them. As Marcus sat alone later that night, memories bled through. The deserts of Afghanistan, the jungles of South America, missions where the enemy was unseen, always probing, always testing before striking hard. His commanding officer's words echoed in his head. The enemy always shows his hand before the real fight. Watch, wait, strike only when it matters. Marcus clenched his fists. He hadn't wanted to go back to that life. He had wanted peace. Soil instead of sand. Crops instead of chaos. But peace had been taken from him. The following day, Marcus drove to the county records office. If his land held value, there'd be a paper trail. Hours of digging led him to it. A sealed document from a mining company, dated just 6 months ago. They had filed interest in the surrounding land, but his farm was dead center in the zone. And the name on the company's board? Gerald Hensley, Travis's father. Now it all made sense. The bullying, the sheriff's threats, the drone. They didn't just want him gone. They wanted him destroyed, discredited, erased, so they could take everything. That night, Marcus heard gunfire. Not at his house, but near his livestock pens. He raced out to find 2 of his cows dead, their throats slit. Nailed to the fence was a note, scrawled in red paint. Next time it's you. Marcus's jaw tightened. He buried the animals himself, each shovel of dirt heavy with rage. They wanted to break him, but they had underestimated who they were dealing with. For the first time in years, Marcus opened the trunk in his attic. Inside lay his old gear, not weapons, those he had left behind, but tools, night vision goggles, camouflage netting, a combat knife with a blade still sharp. He set up hidden cameras around his property, rigged motion sensors along the fence, and reinforced every entry point to his house. But most of all, he prepared himself, physically, mentally, spiritually, because the next move would be his. The very next evening, the trucks came back. Travis and his gang, drunk and loud, trying to bait Marcus into a confrontation. Come on out, Carter. Let's see if you're as tough as you think. They fired shots into the air, whooping, laughing, headlights sweeping across the farmhouse. Marcus stood inside, silent, watching through a scope. His finger rested on the trigger of his shotgun, but he didn't fire. Not yet, because through the chaos, he noticed something strange. One of the men wasn't drunk, wasn't laughing. He stood apart, scanning the property with deliberate precision. His movements were tactical, professional. Marcus's blood ran cold. That man wasn't a local. As the trucks finally peeled out, Marcus crept outside to inspect the damage. That's when he found it. A small black device, no bigger than a fist, hidden under his porch. A tracker. They weren't just harassing him anymore. They were monitoring his every move. Marcus held it in his hand, his reflection glinting in the dark metal. And in that moment, he knew the next strike wouldn't be intimidation. It would be an attack. They had harassed him. They had threatened him. They had killed his animals. And now, they had planted a tracker under his porch. The message was clear. Marcus Carter was not just a target. He was prey. But what they didn't realize, what they couldn't even imagine, was that this quiet farmer had once hunted terrorists in caves, drug lords in jungles, and assassins in cities where shadows were the only cover. They thought they had cornered a weak man, but Marcus Carter was about to show them he was a warrior. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, the tracker lying on the wood between his hands. The ticking of the clock was the only sound. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't even angry. He was focused. He knew the tracker was transmitting. He knew they were watching, waiting, planning. So he gave him something to watch. He cooked dinner, sat on the porch, pretended to sleep, all while, in the darkness, he prepared his traps, motion trigger flares, camouflage ditches, hidden tripwires. Every inch of his land became a battlefield. Around 2 a.m., the first sign came, a rustle, a shadow moving too carefully through the tree line. Marcus watched through night vision. It wasn't Travis or his drunken gang. This was the man he had spotted before, the one who moved like a soldier. The infiltrator crouched, scanning the property, communicating quietly into a headset. Marcus's chest tightened. They brought in a professional. He let the man advance, let him think he was undetected. Then, with a soft whistle, Marcus triggered a flare. The night exploded in white light, blinding the intruder. In seconds, Marcus was on him, silent, fast, knife at his throat. "Who sent you?" Marcus hissed. The man struggled, then stilled. His voice was calm, eerily calm. "You don't know what's under your feet, do you?" Marcus pressed harder. "Answer." The man smirked. "They'll kill me if I talk, but they'll kill you either way." Before Marcus could respond, the man jammed his own neck against the blade, ending it instantly. Marcus stumbled back, shock rippling through him. Whoever was behind this wasn't just powerful, they were ruthless. By dawn, the trucks came again. Not 4 this time, not 6, 10. Armed men spilling out, not drunk bullies now, but mercenaries in tactical gear. At the front, Travis, grinning, shotgun in hand. "End of the line, Carter. Time to pack up and leave or be carried out." Marcus stepped onto his porch, calm as stone. "This land isn't yours." Travis sneered. "It won't be yours much longer." He gestured, and the men fanned out, surrounding the farmhouse. Marcus's traps waited hidden, silent. And so did he. The first mercenary tripped a wire. Flare ignited, blinding him as Marcus dropped him with a single precise strike. Another stepped into a camouflage ditch, his weapon clattering as he fell. Chaos erupted. Gunfire cracked through the air. Dogs snarled, leaping into the fray. Marcus moved like a ghost, striking fast, vanishing, reappearing from angles no one expected. The mercenaries shouted in panic. "He's everywhere. He's not just a farmer." Within minutes, 3 men were down. The rest regrouped, shaken. Travis screamed in rage. "Kill him." But Marcus wasn't fighting to kill. He was fighting to send a message. "I will not be broken." Just as Marcus thought he had the upper hand, headlights appeared on the horizon. Black SUVs, not trucks. Doors opened, and out stepped men in suits. Not mercenaries, not bullies. Government. One man, tall with cold eyes, called out, "Mr. Carter, stand down. You are in possession of restricted land. By federal order, you are to vacate immediately." Marcus froze. "Restricted?" The man smirked. "There are resources beneath your soil, resources vital to national security. This property has been claimed." It hit Marcus like a hammer. This wasn't just about racism, wasn't just about greed. It was about power at the highest level. And they were willing to use bullies, mercenaries, even corrupt law enforcement to take it. Marcus's shotgun weighed heavy in his hands. He could fight, he could resist. But against the federal government, against an operation this big, he thought of his grandfather, of his father, of the generations who had bled for the soil. He thought of the note on the fence, "Next time it's you." And in that moment, Marcus realized this wasn't just about his farm anymore. This was about exposing the truth. But to do that, he'd need to survive. Kindly support our channel. Like and subscribe for more interesting and powerful stories.